A brief history of humans. This presentation will provide a thorough overview of human history, focusing exclusively on significant milestones and impactful events. I chose this topic because I'm very passionate about history and how it works. The content will only contain major wars, pandemics, revolutions, and pivotal moments that have shaped civilizations, ignoring minor events to ensure a concise narrative. Beware, most of the dates are estimated, not perfectly accurate, especially in older history, and information is highly simplified. Pay attention because there will be a blooket at the end. Let's get started. The Agricultural Revolution, 10,000 years ago. 9000 BCE was the Agricultural Revolution. The Agricultural Revolution in 9000 BCE was the first in human history. It jump-started the process in which humans would become different from animals. They would develop their own way to make food. It marks a time where humans stopped hunting and gathering. This led to the growing of specifically selected plants, like wheat, in areas such as Central America and Asia. But they didn't stop at plants. They domesticated breeds of animals such as cows and horses, not only for food, but also for transportation. Now, with food easy to access, the human population increased and started the uprising of another event. Ancient civilizations, 3000 BCE to 500 CE. 3000 to 4000 BCE is when civilization first appeared. The first civilization, powered by sufficient food supply and trade, was Mesopotamia, which appeared around 3000 to 4000 BCE in what is now Iraq. The system was simple. It was just a population working below a king who ruled the land. Mesopotamia relied on the river Tigris, which provided fertile soil for crops and water. As time went on, the Mesopotamians became more advanced and developed some types of writing, architecture, and government. They would be the starting point for more civilizations, such as the Chinese and the Egyptians. In 3300 BCE, Indus Valley is founded. In 3100 BCE, Egyptian civilization is founded. In 3000 BCE, ancient Greece is founded. In 2070 BCE, the Chinese dynasty is founded. In 753 BCE, ancient Rome is founded. In 476 CE, the Roman Empire falls. The Middle Ages, 500 CE to 1400 CE. The Middle Ages was a revolutionary period that transformed and shaped many of our modern customs. Here are some of the advances made in the Middle Ages. The spread of Christianity throughout Europe. Feudalism was created, the system of lords, vassals, and peasants. The spread of Islam. The growth of human populations and facilities. 500 to 800 CE was the rise of barbarian kingdoms in Germany. In the year 1200, the Inca Empire is founded. 1337 is the Hundred Years' War. The Hundred Years' War was a series of conflicts fought between England and France. It started on May 24, 1337, and ended on October 19, 1543. This war lasted for 116 years, with periods of fighting and truces. It originated from English claims to the French throne and turned into a power struggle involving minorities from across Western Europe. The war eventually ended with the signing of the Treaty of Arras in 1345, and England formally recognizing Charles VII as the King of France. 1346 was the Black Death. The Black Death was easily the deadliest disease in human history. It raged from 1346 to 1353 and killed 75 to 200 million people in Europe. The disease was caused by infected fleas, carried on the back of rats, which eventually spread to humans and caused a pandemic. This is why countries like modern day Poland were not affected much by the plague, since both rats and fleas do not thrive in the cold. The Renaissance, 1400 to 1700. The Renaissance was the period of which European cultural, artistic, political, and economical aspects were at their peak. It generally took place from the 14th century to the 17th century. The Renaissance had profound effects on art, literature, science, philosophy, and society. There was also a lot of European exploration in this period. Many artists such as Leonardo da Vinci, Michelangelo, and Raphael created so many masterpieces that the Renaissance is highly connected with them. In 1428, the Aztec Empire is founded. In 1479, the Kingdom of Spain is founded. In 1492, the Americas are found. Christopher Columbus, an Italian explorer and navigator, found the Americas on the morning of October 12, 1492, on his famous ship, the Santa Maria, while searching for new trading routes to India requested by the Spanish. He first landed in El Salvador, Bahamas, but soon ventured mainland and eventually found America. In 1707, Great Britain is founded. Enlightenment, 1700 to 1800. The Enlightenment was a period of intellectual and philosophical movement that occurred in Western Europe. This era was characterized by the use of reason, evidence, individualism, and the courage to challenge tradition and authority. This period promoted ideas such as liberty and constitutional government that shaped modern civilization. However, this era also had involvement in colonialism and slavery. In 1721, Russia was founded. In 1760, the Industrial Revolution began. The Industrial Revolution was a period of economic, technological, and social change that first began in England around the time of the late 18th century. This brought the invention of the steam engine, usage of coal as energy, mass production of materials such as iron, and many other mechanical advancements. It generally marks a period of humans transitioning from hand-making goods to machines. 1765 was the American Revolution. The American Revolution occurred in British America from 1765 to 1783. During this war, the founding fathers of America, George Washington, Benjamin Franklin, etc., turned 13 colonies, which are now states, into an independent country. The American colonialists objected to being taxed ridiculously by the British. This led to the 13 of Britain's colonies winning independence and forming America. The wars, led by George Washington, lasted for over a decade as they tried to dethrone the British. The American Patriot Forces, with the help of the French allies, eventually defeated the British, resulting in the signing of the Declaration of Independence in 1776. This marked America as an independent country, with George Washington as the first official president. 1789 was the French Revolution. The revolution began in 1789 and ended in 1799. The revolution overthrew the monarchy and abolished the feudal system in France. This revolution also introduced the ideas of liberty to Europe. The revolution occurred due to King Louis XIV, who led a monarchy. Times for the non-royal population of France were already hard, with the royals more focused on making themselves rich and happy, other than the population. Then, when France was in an economic crisis, the king started charging ridiculous amounts of money as taxes, which ended up making the population revolt. The king was killed in 1799, ending the revolt and giving to the uprising of Napoleon. 1861 was the American Civil War. The American Civil War was a 4-year conflict fought between the U.S. and the 11 sovereign former Union states that seceded and formed the Confederates. It arose due to disputes over slavery and states' rights. When Abraham Lincoln, who was anti-slavery, was elected in 1860, the sovereign states seceded from the U.S. The Civil War is considered the most important war in America's history. It decided what kind of nation the U.S. would be. After 4 years of fighting and a loss of 625,000 lives, the U.S. finally won and abolished the institution of slavery throughout America. The war officially ended on April 9, 1865, when Confederate General Robert Lee surrendered to General Grant at Courthouse in Virginia. In 1871, Germany was founded. The 20th century, 1900 to 2000. 1914 was World War I. World War I was a global conflict that lasted from 1914 to 1918. The war was triggered by the assassination of Archduke Ferdinand of Austria-Hungary by a Serbian group in 1914. The war involved many European countries and their colonies, as well as the United States, Japan, and the Ottoman Empire. The war was fought between two groups, the Allies and the Central Powers. Its fighting took place in Europe, the Middle East, Africa, the Pacific, and parts of Asia. It was one of the deadliest wars in history, with about 20 million deaths. The war led to the fall of four imperial dynasties, and its destabilization of Europe paved the way for World War II. The war ended with the signing of the Treaty of Versailles in 1919, after the Central Powers retreated. 1918 was the Spanish flu. The Spanish flu, also known as influenza, pandemic of 1918 to 1919, was one of the deadliest pandemics in history, claiming 50 million lives and infecting 500 million people. The disease was caused by a new variant of the influenza virus, spread by troops in World War I. It was named the Spanish flu because Spain was the first country to report the disease. With no vaccines or effective treatments, the pandemic caused massive disruption. Schools, theaters, churches, and businesses were forced to close. Citizens were ordered to wear masks. The pandemic eventually ended in early 1920. 1917 was the Russian Revolution. The Russian Revolution was a period of political change in Russia that began in 1917. It was mainly caused by economic hardship, food shortages, and government corruption. It consisted of two smaller revolts. The first was the February Revolution. This overthrew the imperial government. This was a revolt by the peasants and working class against the leadership of Tsar Nicholas II. The second revolt was the October Revolution. This revolution placed the political party, Bolsheviks, led by Vladimir Lenin, in power. This eventually led to the creation of the Soviet Union, transforming Russia into the first communist party. 1939 was World War II. World War II was the largest war in human history and took place from 1939 to 1945. The two sides to the war were the Axis, Nazi Germany, Italy, as well as Japan, and the Allies, who were France, Great Britain, USA, the Soviet Union, and China. This war costed a total of $4 trillion and killed between 50 to 80 million people, most of whom were civilians. This war included massacres, a genocide called the Holocaust, the bombing of several areas such as Hiroshima in Japan, starvation, and disease. World War II ended with the surrender of Nazi Germany in 1945, after the death of their leader. The Soviet Union invaded Germany and caused Berlin to fall. Japan also surrendered in 1945. They formally signed a surrender agreement on August 15, 1945. However, two of these countries would start a war, a very cold war. 1947 was the Cold War. The Cold War was a 50-year conflict between the US and the Soviet Union, starting in 1947 after being allies in World War II and ending in 1991. Despite its name, it was not a war. Both the countries and their allies were at peace, but the Cold War was really just an aggressive arms race, proxy wars, and a fight to be the most powerful. The Americans believed that the Soviets were plotting to take over the world with the spread of communism. Their best defense was to gather intel and defend themselves with threats. The Cold War had lots of wars and conflicts such as the Vietnamese War, the Korean War, and the fall of the Berlin Wall. The Cold War ended in 1991 with the fall of the Soviet Union because of economic, political, and weakening reasons. The Cold War also included the space race, a race between the Soviet Union and the US to achieve superior spaceflight capability. It began in 1955 and ended in 1975. The competition also was contributing to the arms race between the two countries. It consisted of the creation of satellites, space probes, and more. Some of the most important events in the race are the launch of Sputnik, the first satellite, by the USSR in 1957, the first manned spaceflight by Yuri Gagarin of the USSR in 1961, and the Apollo moon landing by the US in 1969. This period ended in 1975 with the Apollo-Soyuz mission, easing the tension of the race for both countries. In 1983, the Internet was created. The 21st century, 2000 to present. 2019 was the COVID pandemic. COVID-19 is a global disease caused by the coronavirus. This pandemic first emerged in 2019 and has not yet ended, with no officially working cure. As of March 2023, COVID has caused more than 759 million confirmed cases and 6.87 million deaths globally. It is mainly fatal to populations of older ages and is one of the deadliest pandemics in world history, striking humanity economically and socially. Schools, offices, and other facilities have been forced to shut down and quarantine during the first few stages of this period. People were required to wear masks as a precaution and avoid social and physical interaction to prevent the spread of COVID.